because you did send some reflections from it, where you attended an exhibit of posters related to the history of the Black Panther Party at a place called Poster House in New York City. And I just want to read this one part where you write, one of the most press. In fact, let me even
Oh shit. Okay.
share this because I got it on. Let's see this right here. So let's share this part here. One of the most press. One of the most pressing was the complete absence of any mention of the Black Panther Party veterans currently held as political prisoners in the U.S. What made this especially shameful was the fact that the exhibit even featured the freedom campaigns around Bobby Huey, Kathleen Eldridge, and the Panther 21 in New York, and Angela Davis's. Yet, while one entire section on the history of the Black Power, on the history of Black Power, was dedicated to the work of H. Rap Brown, Jamil Al-Amin, there was absolutely no mention of him currently being a political prisoner. What one would come away with was that there were political prisoners in COINTELPRO back then, but somehow not today, and somehow it is not part of the direct legacy of the party and the movement. Also shameful was the conclusion of the exhibit, which again, while directly speaking of on the legacy of the party, made no mention of political prisoners, prisoners of war. Furthermore, it claims that the primary reason of the party's collapse was discrimination against women and corruption, as opposed to defining what were internal contradictions compounded by the direct assault of the state. So I found that to be a very compelling section. It resonates very much with my own views of what I see happening around in the world. So I wanted to give you a chance to say any more about that you wanted to, or to elaborate on any of those points, draw connections, those points to Mapuche's struggle, if you see any, or yeah.
Yeah. So there is no national liberation movement that does not also demand the freedom for political prisoners. I think you definitely had Daruba on here a few times say that. You've also had him say that a lot of young folks are disconnected from like the history of these movements. It's unfortunate, and the other part of like that same paragraph was that in that same conclusionary piece in the exhibit, it then went on to talk about how the direct, like sort of like the inheritors of the Black Panther Party is like the Black Lives Matter movement, as started by people like Alicia Garza and Patrisse Cullors, and so when I read that, I was like, damn. So my uncle was in the Newark chapter of the party. His name is Adno Smith. He's actually in but he's in this book right here. But he, one of the main things in terms of, you talk about the legacy of the Black Panther Party and what should be primary in a lot of organizing today is freedom for political prisoners, generally, because there are younger folks, including folks who rose up in rebellion in Ferguson, who are political prisoners, folks who are resisting Cop City that are political prisoners, but folks who are elders of the movement, who are forcibly disconnected from the communities where they're at. And again, one of the main aims of COINTELPRO explicitly was to disconnect young people from their, from these revolutionary elders, and to stop the sort of the transference of like knowledge of like organizing and anything that would help build, a movement, to resist the state, to resist capitalism, to gain freedom for colonized people, for working people, so on and so forth. So with this exhibit, I was like, and at first I went into it like enthusiastically, because like I had learned about it through a People's Forum thing where they had a talk with Rosemary Mealy, who I love, and she does a lot of great work with like Cuba Solidarity. She's a Panther veteran herself. And then I'm looking at the exhibit, and it's like, okay, it's curated, it's consultant. It said it was they consulted with like several Panther veterans, in making it. But you know, I'm looking through a lot of the stuff. And it's like, okay, they have a lot of great content. They're talking about socialism. They're talking about anti-imperialism. They're talking about political prisoners at the time. They're talking about H. Rod Brown, and I was like, okay, and that was the first red flag. I'm like, okay, they have a whole section on H. Rod Brown, and then they don't say nothing about him being in prison right now. I was like, okay, well, you know. And then they get to the Panther 21. I'm like, okay, this is cool, you know. And then they get to the conclusion. I'm just like, so the direct legacy of the party isn't the fact that they, you know, it fell apart primarily due to like corruption and discrimination against women, and not like those aren't internal contradictions that are like, again, that are not compounded as a result of this massive assault. Like, you can't explicitly say the government destroyed the Black Panther Party, you know. And that was frustrating. And then, like, again, when you're talking about the legacy of the party and how it lives on today, it's like it lives on today in the fact that these Panther veterans are still fucking alive. They're still around, you know, and half of them, you know, like there's, I don't know how many are still in prison. And I think there's 6 or 7 that are still
Yeah,
in
I'm not
prison.
sure the number
Yeah.
at this point, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Yeah.
I know at some point there was 11, but folks, you know, who were in these organizations or associated organizations, you know, the direct legacy is that they have been political prisoners, that they have been disconnected from movements, you know, intentionally, and that, you know, like Daruba says, a lot of young people are not working with, they don't have any memory of, and there's a saying in Chile actually, that a people without memory is a people without without knowledge of the history is a people without memory. You know, they have no ability to go forward, and so that's why, like in you know, in Chile, it is very like much a thing where they keep re-emphasizing like the coup, but they're still in a process of recovering a lot of their memory because of the fact that it had, like, that period of time has disrupted so much, you know, and has disconnected young people from a lot of those lessons. And I think that, I don't know, I'm not one of those people who's like, you know, I'm just impressed by the aesthetics of things. Like, oh yeah, it's cool. So you shouldn't criticize, you know, uh, the fact that these things were left out of an exhibit that is inherently political. That you're talking about the Black Panther Party, and the fact that, again, the responsibility of those who say that, you know, who want to fucking dress up and, you know, take the name of the Panthers, their main responsibility should be to free the political prisoners that were actually in the party, and then try to help them actually be in organized spaces in their communities to help bring those lessons from that, you know, to young people today. And there's a lot of opportunities that are missed when you don't when you don't do that, you know. um you know, there's a lot of public platforms now where people get to talk about the party. And if that isn't, you know, I would hope at the least, like, you know, a lot of the proceeds from the exhibit go to political prisoners commissaries. But, like, again, that this there has to be some kind of, you have this public forum, you should be telling people about this. At least that's my opinion, but I don't know.
No, I appreciate you know, I mean, just when I was just looking at the Wikipedia page when we brought it up a little bit ago for Operation Condor, I gotta actually like study this for real. I've never actually studied that operation for real.
Yeah.
But the numbers are staggering. So when you're talking about the ongoing impact, I mean, I know it's not just in Chile, but the entire region, tens of thousands of leftists wiped out. It's going to have a lasting impact on what versions of history get passed on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Daruba's also said, BLM is not is Black Liberation
Hmm.
Movement.